Hey guys, Ben Nash from Pivot Wealth here, and today I'm really excited to be here with Kevin or Kev. Unfortunately, his partner Jenny couldn't be here with us today, but Kev and Jenny have just gone through the planning process just over the last sort of few months. So we're going to chat a bit about, I suppose, how they tackled things, what sought them to sort of go down this path in the first place, what some of the results and outcomes were, and tips for other people in a similar sort of situation. Kev, thanks for joining us, mate.
No worries. Good to be here.
Yeah, nice one, mate. Well, look, I think a good place to start is start at the start and sort of tell us a bit about, where you guys were at before sort of coming to speak to Pivot.
Yeah, sure, no worries. So we've just bought a house like July last year. We bought and moved in, which is, pretty lucky considering where the housing market is at the moment.
Definitely.
But so we decided to buy July last year. That was probably more of an instinctive purchase rather than something we planned to do. We'd been saving for a long time to get our own home, but we started to look around the market in July just to get an idea of what do we want from a property, what sort of area do we want to live in, and the rest of it. And with a view of actually waiting a little bit until JobKeeper ended. We thought the market might go down a bit, and a few other things. Just found a property by chance, really, and ended up buying. So got pretty lucky there in terms of just making a move on it, I think. But because we were always saving for a house, we had a tangible goal that we were working towards. So we always had a little bit of direction. And then when we actually purchased our house, it was a little bit like, all right, now we've got the house. What's our next steps? What do we want to do? And we were kind of a little bit headless in a way. We changed some of our financial structure, I guess, to try and pay down the mortgage as quickly as possible and keep everything in our offset account. Which it wasn't really being very fruitful in terms of the way that we were doing things. We were living on a credit card to keep as much money in the offset account, but then just ended up overspending, and we were kind of living a little bit limitless, I guess, in a way. And without those, without those boundaries, the hard boundaries in place, it was a little bit of just spend what you want and not really having too much left to show of it that was meaningful. That was kind of end of last year as kind of working through that process, and then coming towards New Year, and probably the same for everybody at New Year's time, you kind of have a bit of a reflect on how the year that's been and some of the things you want to focus on the year coming up. And financially for us, one of those things was we just want to have a plan and just get some real clarity around what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, because we realized that we were being a bit headless, to be honest, and what we were doing wasn't really working. So that kind of led us to reach out, really, and start talking to you guys.
Yeah, look, I think I sort of half jokingly say in some of when we're doing presentations and stuff that offset accounts are conspiracies that the banks created to make people spend more money so they stay in debt for longer, because it's really, you've got a chunk, whether it's 10 grand, 20 grand, 50 grand, or more in your offset. That's a significant amount of money, right? So one, your psychology says that, oh yeah, I'm a baller, we've got all this money, so we can do whatever. Then on the flip side, you've got no clarity on anything because everything's just in one big pile, and you've got this credit card that you spend on, so you never have to think about how much you're spending or what happens until you go to clear the credit card. And definitely the optimal place to hold money, if with all of the psychology and behavioral finance stuff out of the way, is yes, definitely put it in the offset. But practically when you go to do that, it's just that all of those things get in the way. And I've spoken to so many people, and they end up just frustrated from, sometimes years. Luckily, you guys nipped it in the bud at the start, but sometimes years of slow progress and not really getting ahead, even though they're doing the best thing with their money. And I think that sometimes you need to give yourself permission to do something that's not the best objective, like in absolute terms. Like we use this bank account framework where you have accounts in money in accounts that earn zero interest or close enough to zero that it's negligible. But then you find that your savings, your ability to save, because you've got the sort of the thinking and mindset hacks, it increases, massively from there. So it's not just about the numbers; it's about the whole picture, which is sometimes easy to lose sight of. But I'm interested because you purchased this property before you started working with us. How did you find that process?
Well, like I say, it was a little bit last minute, to be honest, because we weren't really ready for it at all, and we were in the midst of COVID, and I work in the sporting sector, so we were pretty heavily affected in terms of wages were cut, hours reduced, and all of those type of things. And really, that was probably a blessing in disguise in some ways, because it meant that we needed to make a change. By us moving to a mortgage rather than paying rent, it actually reduced our monthly outgoings, so that there were some benefits there. And we just got lucky as well, mate. To be honest, we just found something we liked and just made a move on it.
And we will dive into the planning process in a bit more detail. But look, reflecting, like now that you've gone through that, the full shebang, thorough financial planning process, what do you think would be different, if anything? Maybe not so much in the outcomes, but potentially in like how you felt about the purchase and stuff, if you had that plan before you purchased, as opposed to going it alone.
Yeah, no, for sure. Again, because it's all a bit of a blur, man, to be honest, because it was we were throwing everything together. We had, luckily, one of our friends had just bought a house in the area, and they recommended their mortgage consultant. So so we had the point of contact that we could go to, and we just got lucky. I think again, just the guy was really good and really helped us out. Just as well, just not really knowing anything, but never bought a house before, so it was all around. What does a conveyancer do? Where do I get a mortgage from? Where do I start pulling these numbers from? And then him helping us through that journey. Ideally, we would have liked to have been a lot more set up and established to understand exactly what we could spend, where we're best to spend it, have all the approvals in. Because again, another outlag of COVID was all the banks were massively delayed. So we were trying to extend waiting periods and things like that, where if we had all of our finances set and set in stone, and we could move as we found something, we would have been in a much mentally safer place. I think I lost a few hairs over the process. So mate, I would definitely like to be a little bit more structured. And one of the things that we're doing through our process is saving up for a deposit on an investment property, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later in terms of the process we got to for that being the decision for us. But just to have that as a goal and have that set in stone, and us not really now having to work, because we've got our own home. The investment property is, although there are going to be better and worse times to buy, because we're looking at more of a longer term type scenario. It's for us, it's around just making sure that we're financially set and secure, and all the things are in the right place, and then we'll make the choice on the right property rather than feeling like we have to jump in because the market's in a certain scenario.
Definitely. Yeah, and I'm keen to sort of dive into that process in a little bit more detail. But before we do that, maybe you've covered a lot of ground with the planning work that you guys have done. But tell us, what are the top sort of 2 or 3 things that I suppose the results, or not the results, but the sort of the things that had the biggest impact for you guys from that process?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the big ones for us was, and it's probably the same for a lot of couples, we were very siloed in terms of, I looked after the finances, Jen looked after the house, or and her business. Like she's starting up her own business, so she had a lot of things going on that side, and I was always in charge of just looking after the finances. And one of the things really was just open up the communication between us. And I know that doesn't sound like a tangible, net core value benefit, but for us just to be on the same page and just to pull all these ideas out on out on the whiteboard that we did when we were going through the platform, going through the process, and just to, we could, openly and honestly discuss what we wanted to do and where we wanted to get to. That part of the process, I think, was very, very beneficial for us. And then just some of the things that you don't really think about, like organizing wills and checking your super and moving your super into different places, all these things that kind of you've already set and forget, and although they're just not front of mind, I think. So getting a load of those things aligned, and now having that confidence to say, right, we're in a good place there, now we can forget it, and we can move on to the other things. And some of the being really targeted in terms of this, it's not just something that we found on the internet, or that could be a good idea or that's a bad idea. It's, we know for our financial situation that the things that we're doing, and we went through a load of these different scenarios, but the ones that we've chosen that we feel are right for us, rather than just some of the just picking 10 ideas off the internet and trying to follow one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you're right, that part of it and some of this stuff is, maybe it's boring. Maybe boring is the wrong word. Maybe it's the right word. I don't know. But, you think about doing things like wills and like getting those basics into place that you sort of know that you should do it. But then it's easy to let life get in the way. Plus, you're not sure what to do or how to do it or what you should be actually thinking about. So it just ends up sitting on the to-do list. And all the time it's just consuming this mental capacity that sometimes you just go, get it done. When you're young, it's not something that, is a likely thing. It's different doing a will for a 30-year-old than a 70-year-old. But these are things that if something goes wrong and you don't have the right stuff in place, then it's a total nightmare for everybody. I've seen tragically, a few people that have passed away at a young age, and it's just, it costs a lot of money to sort it out, but two, just the person cost is really high. So it's good to, you tick the box, you move on, and then you can, again, it's just all building into that confidence that you do. But you mentioned, you sort of touched on the scenario planning piece and getting you guys sort of focused on your next step around looking to purchase an investment property. Can you tell us a bit more about how I suppose the stuff that you went through with Marcus in the team, how that helped you to, I suppose, end up where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, owning an investment property was never really on our agenda. We didn't really think about it in that way, and I guess we'd never really considered it too hard, but it just seemed like an additional burden, I guess, rather than us trying to live for our best selves and sort ourselves out, if that makes sense. But when we went through the scenario planning, and it was really good at the way that Marcus went through it, and because we were all going to get to a stage where we need to retire. So he was kind of pulling out, what's the lifestyle that you want when you get to a certain age, and how do you see your life changing over these different life periods and over the 20-year span, and what sort of number would we need to have in order to get what sort of value in assets we would need to have to be generating some sort of passive income, which was one of our requests. And just really highlighting that number, and then how do we get there, and what are the steps that we can take, and then looking at the different ways that we could do that. And so we went through just, kind of what are we doing now, and even if we take away the poor credit card, living on the credit card and trying to use your offset account, from an ideal scenario of how much would we be spending in certain things. So that was kind of the baseline of how we're living. And then moving forward was we looked at a few other different options around if we were just to go to the share market, and if we were to just go to an investment property, and if we were to go half and half, and I think there was about 6 or 7 different options when we went through them, and just really highlighting what the different impacts that they could have if we brought them on at different times, and allowed us to really focus on, well, if we want to get to this number, which is the ideal goal out of everything, and it doesn't matter how you get there, then we can do these certain things to get there quicker or faster, or at least give ourselves a bit of a buffer on the other side of that number. So we've got comfort that if anything does go wrong and the share market crashes or housing market crashes or whatever, then we're building some sort of buffers and some safety into those numbers as well. So yeah, we went through the process. We really enjoyed going through it, and for us, we actually decided to split what we were doing and go half into an investment and half into the share market, which again, you guys helped us set up accounts and went through all the rigmarole of I wouldn't know where to start and the different investment splits and strategies that are involved there. I think we spoke about this before, Ben, when we were saying it's like drinking from a fire hose. Some of the stuff that you get from some of the stuff you can get off the internet. There's 1,000 good ideas out there, but if you don't know which one's the right one for you, then you kind of scuppered. So that process, we found that really good, and that was one of the highlights really. And then I guess the banking framework that underpins that, we're still kind of getting to grips with it and what lives in what account and different bits. But just to see the investment and the money flowing from one account to another because of the cadence of the transactions, it actually feels like you're making a lot of progress very quickly. And I think that's a really good way of doing it, rather than just a slow and steady increases, although it's smaller amounts, but over a shorter amount of time, it actually feels like you're moving forward.
And I think that when, especially at the start, when you're making some changes and you're doing some stuff, that you want to get one of the things that we do, with those weekly banking transfers, there's a couple of reasons that we do that. One is about the fact that a week isn't, if you spend all your money on the first couple of days of the week, that you don't have that long to wait to get topped up again. But the second is that you get that motivation because you can see, the money's hitting the savings account, it's hitting the investment account, or whatever. And I think for you guys, you're in that position, like a lot of people that we talk to, where you had some stuff, like you had a bunch of stuff going on, and you had some investments already, but you're and not that they were not good investments, but it's the guys that have the slickest marketing that tend to get the flow and good user experience, and now good companies as well. But sometimes when you don't have the confidence, because you've just got, like you say, you get the ideas off the internet and you start implementing them, that you don't have the same level of confidence to go, no, I'm actually all in on this thing, and I'm going to make it actually happen. But tell us, Kev, with you mentioned at the start sort of the fact that it helped you and Jenny to get on the same page with the decision making that you guys were doing. How did the scenario planning and modeling output, how did that help? Like, how did that play out with the discussions that you guys had, and what happened? Because obviously we have our meetings, but what sort of happened behind the scenes to help you guys come together to end up sort of fully aligned and moving forward on the same page with this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we were always pretty aligned in terms of what we wanted. It was more the transparency of, this is the amount of money that we've got, and this is the amount of money that comes in. Where does that go, and how do we best get to that number to give us that security? So I think there was a load of things around just what type of, I would be very happy living a little bit more stringently, I think, and Jen would probably a little bit more extravagant and a little bit more free with the money. So, just even to have those conversations around, we need to set a number here of, because this money's coming into our accounts every week, we need to come to an agreement of, yes, it doesn't have to be probably as tight as I am, and it probably doesn't have to be as extravagant as you are. And how do we kind of get to that middle point that we're both still enjoying life, right? Because at the end of the day, you're only here once, and we need to enjoy the time that we're here. So it just raised a load of bigger conversations, mate, to be honest. So it wasn't just even financial. It just talked around anything and everything about the future. And it was just a bit of a catalyst to do that.
Yeah, definitely all links together, right? Like you've got, we're talking about financial planning or financial strategies, but really it's like, where do we want to live in the future? How comfortable are we with carrying this risk? What's our family plan? Like, all of these things that they're all tangential, but they're all so critical when it comes to making the best financial decisions. But it's interesting. One of the things that, because we, when we're working with new clients in particular, and for those people that haven't been through the planning process before, or that are trying to decide whether they should be going through it. A common thing that we get is where you have a couple that there's one person in the couple that's more drives more of the financial side of things. It's surprisingly not a male-female thing at all. Although blokes do have tend to have there'd be probably a little bit more passengers than drivers in a lot of cases, because they just think that everything's okay, and there's that like blokey sort of confidence that we get with stuff, and we figure that we got this and don't want to ask anyone for help and all that sort of stuff. But it's funny that I think we talk to people, and in that case that sometimes people are saying, because we charge, because our fee is higher for a couple versus, you know, working with individual, obviously, because there's more work and more inputs and all that sort of stuff. But they say, well, should I, or maybe I should just do it because I'm the one that makes the decisions. But for mine, I think, like you guys say, that there's this huge benefit in that you go, well, actually, no, this is what we've got. So, you know, we can spend it all, we can save it all. Like either of those things are probably not, well, one's not going to be very financially responsible. The second's not really going to make us any money, or probably we're somewhere in the middle. But for that dominant person, that they're pushing it down the line to the other person to say, well, you have to do this. Whereas when you go through the process, you go, well, no one has to do anything, but we have to decide what we're going to do. So let's decide. Do you have any tips for anyone that would be in that sort of having that sort of thought in their mind?
No, mate. Well, we obviously weighed that up ourselves. I mean, Jen had just stopped her job just before COVID to start her own business. So, you know, we had obviously the thought of, you know, do we just do me as the main revenue earner and then not do her? But to be honest, we were in it together. So it's exactly what you said there, mate. If you're cutting one half of the equation off, then, you know, you've got a massive blind spot. So it all needs to be taken into account. And I think because the way that Jen was starting her own business, there was things there that we wanted to plan into the future of, you know, even if this did or didn't work, or if it kind of goes all right and starts bringing some revenue in, then how does that impact the outcomes at the end? Where if we were to go just my salary or, you know, just my income, then we wouldn't have got that holistic picture. And I don't think it would have been as beneficial for us, even just to the degree of the, you know, the conversations and the confidence that we now have together around being aligned on what we're going to do is massively beneficial, mate.
Yeah, and I think especially if you've got someone that's more, like organized or more more likely to spend, that you're probably going to save more than that extra little bit of money that you pay over the next 12 months by being, you know, making those decisions and being in it together as a team. So I think it's hard to know before you've gone through that process, but certainly we have the benefit of having seen it a whole heap of times before, and the impact that it has. So it's great, I suppose, that you went down that path, and you can, you know, you'll now see that come together over the next little bit. And I know that you're already seeing it as per what we were talking about before.
Yeah. I can imagine also, mate, it probably would drive some animosity. Not that obviously we've got no experience, we don't go the other way, but if someone was pushing down to the other person around, you're only spending this amount of money a week, I can imagine that'd, you know, grate you.
Definitely. Yeah, I know for myself and my now wife, but when we started dating, like, because money's really fun to spend. It's heaps of fun to spend money. Like, you can buy all sorts of stuff with money. So we would, you know, we're going out, and you have a decent meal, and then go out and have a few drinks, or, you know, go do a bunch of stuff, and all of these things cost money. And I noticed for us that we were spending much more money than we wanted, but because I was sort of controlling everything, that I was like, well, it's like I'm saying, oh, we need to spend less, we should be saving more, and it was like there was no transparency with stuff. So what we did, and this happened probably about 8 years ago, that we went through exactly the same framework planning process, got that same savings planner that you guys used, and we just mapped everything out and said, this is what we've got. where do we want to be allocating our cash? And we went through and we put all the things in, and then everything was in the red. We were going backwards like massively. And I'm like, because that's what you do, right? Like you go, I want this much for travel. I want this much for eating out. I want this much for all these other things. And you look at it and go, crap, like now I need to reprioritize, because obviously one, you can't just keep going backwards. But two, you want to be saving some money. And the more you save, you know that the more quickly you get ahead. But we just sat there, and I definitely am more of the driver of the finances in our relationship, being a financial planner, definitely. But we just sat there and said, okay, well, what are we going to deprioritize? And then we decided together, and then we set up the framework, and then start tipping the money through the buckets. And that was the thing. And we immediately, I think we increased our savings at that time about 400%. And then it just made, what I found was that over the next, it's probably like a 3-year period, that it just got so much easier to spend less money on stuff, but choose the things that were like really high priority, like high enjoyment spending. For us, and especially living in Sydney, that we fell into the habit of, we're just ordering in like all of the time. Like we just every night doing that stuff, and that's great, but and tasty, but you end up spending all of this cash, and we've now pared it back, and we still order in like once or twice a week, but you actually enjoy it more because it's something that you do sometimes instead of just what you do every day. So I think it's that nobody's opinion is necessarily more important, although maybe I wouldn't say that's my wife, but you do just need to sort of decide together, and then you've made your decision, so then you stick to your decision. But Kev, tell us, what are the sort of the like, just shifting gears a little bit, what have been some of the tangible outcomes for you? You mentioned a couple of things already, but what have been the tangible outcomes from the planning process for you guys so far?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big ones was just having someone to organize us and point us in the right direction was really actually tangible, because we go through the implementation guide, there's a whole raft of things that you guys need to do and that we need to do as well. And I think that shared commitment works really well and keeps both parties open and agreed on what the outcome. So working through that and making sure everything was in place has been a real good one from a tangible perspective. In terms of, we saved money when we moved all of our super and pieces like that. So, it's that kind of thing where we wouldn't have even really thought of or touched on really. I was with an employer plan, and Jen was with her old employer plan, and, we would have just rolled them on really. So being able to just review all of that, I think it has been a good tangible outcome, and just change of lifestyle, exactly what you were saying there around, just setting our priorities in terms of what we want to achieve, and then being able to achieve them because we have the framework set up to do so. Just having that automated as well just takes so much effort away, because you don't have to think. It just happens, and you know that the bills come out of here, and if you've got money in your account, go and blow it if you want, and it's happening. You're getting some more next week. So I think those are the tangible ones for us, is around just the whole setup and the framework. I mean, we're just going through the tax review process at the moment, which is another good one, because tax is one of those things for me. I'm always like, are we leaving money on the table anywhere? Because although we don't spend a great deal of time on it, and some of that preparation could be done earlier, I guess, when I was doing it individually. But just to have that reminder, tax is coming up, let's bring us all your information together, let's have a look at it together, let's start making some informed decisions, and how that all balances out. The other thing is we're looking again at a second car, and what the financing options. And now, just before, I would have been looking through the internet to find out what's the best option for me. Is it get some more money out of here, take a finance, or pay outright? What's the best option? And now I feel that I've got that point of contact where I can reach out to the team, and they know my history, they know exactly my financial state, and they can give me the unbiased opinion, which is in my best interest, not necessarily going to either a car finance company or a lease type scenario that we can do through work. So just having that point of contact again is a real safety blanket, I think, and probably over the course of time, you kind of make your money back on those things, tenfold.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, look, I think I'm keen to talk a bit about the value of stuff, but outside of the tangible benefits of things, and I was actually looking at your advice document before, and the quantifiable value from that initial planning process, which is like 3 times the after fees, 3 times the fee, which is awesome to see. But then you've got all of that, like how you're a busy guy, like you guys have both got plenty of stuff going on that you're what's your time worth, and for a lot of the people that we work with, these professionals and executives, and if you actually broke down your hourly rate, it'd be into the hundreds. And then so to know to go, oh yeah, we need another car, let's not spend 4 hours looking through the internet at, do we do this, do we do that, and exploring these options that are never going to work, is a big part of it. And I think if I relate it to myself, I know I've actually got multiple business coaches because people that I just work with, that they, like you say, that they understand me, they understand the business, they know what the right things are, the things that'll fit, and the things to look out for if we're considering that, different options. And I think everybody needs a finance partner, a lending partner, a legal partner like that, because it can do the same thing, save you a lot of time, but almost more importantly, give you a lot of confidence that that you can just release that stuff mentally as well.
Big time, yeah. I know, 100% agree with that, mate. And the other thing is, as well, I know like some of my other friends use different ways of servicing, where the financial advisor would take a clip and, out of different products that they sell. And for me, I didn't want that. I wanted it to be totally unbiased. That was a really big thing for me, because, at the end of the day, the decisions that we need to make, I think, obviously that for us as the customer, if it's about us and, the benefit for you guys is retaining us as customers, then, that's the tool that works best for the long run for everybody, rather than, some of the probably more shorter term thinking of, oh, I've got a good deal for this year, but, what is the underlying cost that you don't see of some of those deals that you've now committed to? So that was for us.
Definitely, it's hard for us to not be biased, because obviously we think that the way we do things is the best way of doing things. That's why we do them the way that we do. Yeah. But for me, I just always it just never made sense to me that you get paid more based on how much you've got invested, or you get paid more based on which product you use, or as the financial advisor, you get paid more. That I just and I had this conversation in the last business that I worked in when I wasn't an owner and I didn't have the control. And with life insurance, where we charge a fee to do life insurance, income insurance, all of that sort of stuff, but we strip out the commission. And what most advisors say, 99+% of advisors accept that commission, and they say, well, you don't pay for the advice because we just get the commission. But what they're not telling you is that if you you can strip out the commission, and then it costs 30% less, which is thousands of dollars a year, which means it's worth paying a couple of grand to get set up properly at the start. And then you're going to save literally tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of the time that you've got that. So I used to have these conversations with people, and my approach to that sort of insurance, I think it's really important. I've got tons of it myself. I've paid like 10 grand a year for my life insurance and income insurance and all that sort of stuff. And I happily pay it because I've seen how important it is when something goes wrong. But it hasn't changed at all. But when I was advising these people in the last company, they're saying they look at the document and go, well, you're going to make $7,000 in commission from me doing this. They're like, do you really believe it when you say, yes, you need all of this insurance? And I really did, but I totally also got it that if I was them, I would have the same sort of hesitation, because there's a significant conflict there. So I don't know. I think the fee for service stuff, just paying fees, gives you the most confidence, right, with
Yeah.
what you're doing, which is a big part of why you go down this path.
And then you save it back in other ways as well. Like, I mean, in our share portfolio thing, you know, the fees are taken out, and super, the fees are taken out. So you make them back in other ways, although you'll be paying in one and in the other. You know, net neutral at the end. So
yeah, and I think it's hard for full fee service firms that you like ours that you go, oh, financial plan that's $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever the number is, and people go, shit, that's a lot of money. And then, but if you've got these other firms, they go, well, it's $500 and 4% on the way in and 1% ongoing. And people go, oh, 4%, that seems okay. When it could be just more, even more money, because it's little numbers. It's all this psychology stuff. So it is a barrier. I've certainly been frustrated in the past in instances where people are doing their comparisons and homework, as you probably should, but where people don't have, they don't realize that the real cost of average advice is so much more than just the fee that you pay, and then it's structuring things in different ways. It doesn't quite look the same. But Kev, tell us, how are you feeling? How are you feeling after going through this process? How are you feeling now versus sort of how you were feeling before?
Yeah, I think just confident, mate. To be honest, it's just we know where we know that number that we need to get to, and we know the direction that we're going to get it. Because for us it's a longer term play before we can even buy into an investment property or whatever it is. A lot of those decisions, can still be changed if we want to, and we can reevaluate them. But we just have that confidence that everything's in the right place. We're spending the right amounts on the right things. And it's going to get us to our overall goal, which, is massive when you can just, like you say, you can free that mental space of, oh, I've seen something on the internet. Oh, I wonder if that'll work for us, or, and the rest of it, you can kind of just forget and be confident in the direction that we're going. So, that's the big one for me. It's that confidence and clarity of direction is massive. So similar to what we were when we were buying a house. We had that tangible thing that we had as a goal that we were focused on in it, and it made the progress towards that goal a lot easier. Now we've got a number, which is the same goal, and it's just how do we get there, and we at least now know what that number is for us, and for us to be able to continue our lives in the vein that we want to, if we weren't to be earning money from daily jobs, etc. So
and I think that it's hard if you don't understand how finance or investments work, that you go, well, I want spending around this. Thinking about retirement is very abstract when you've got such a long time to get there. There's a lot of studies that have actually shown that it's hard for us to identify with ourselves 20 years in the future, but you can relate it to saying, well, in the future, do I want to be spending as much as I'm spending right now, or less, heaps less, or do I need heaps more? Obviously, more is always the answer, ideally, but you go, well, I've got a decent standard of living. This is what I need. And then you can start to think about, you realize how much work, one, that you need to sort of get your skates on a bit, because it's big numbers when you think about, trying to provide for even the average after-tax income. You need a decent chunk of assets behind you. Thankfully, the power of compound interest is significant, and you see that that it does really ramp up if you put in the work. But it makes you realize that you do really need to put in that work. So it's often it's a bit of a light bulb moment when you see that, understand it, and you know what you need to do. Kev, I think for us, a lot of the people that we work with, they've not used financial advice before. What for you guys, and they don't know what to expect, I suppose. So for you guys, what surprised you most about the financial advice process?
I think just how easily it was explained, the way that that yourself, Marcus, and the others in the team explained the different strategies and where you build it from, and the different key points of of the model to get you to where you want to go. It was really powerful, but it was really simple. I think that the simplicity of the explanation was a bit of a surprise. I know, especially for Jen, who's not necessarily doesn't have an affinity to numbers necessarily in terms of what she in terms of what she's interested in or passionate about, but she came out of those meetings really clear on, yes, this is what we want. This is the underpinning strategies that are going to deliver us to that point. And it wasn't too much trouble, even if Marcus had to go through things with us again and over again and explain them in different ways. But it was just really, really straightforward. I think was the biggest one compared to, and again, like I say, that you're the only financial advisor that we've worked with, but you kind of have an image of a financial advisor being quite stuffy, right? And you go into a dark office and the bloke's in a suit and a tie, and you can't really describe, you can't really explain, or they wouldn't understand your situation. Being us in our situations, which was again very refreshing dealing with you guys who were very much on a similar wavelength and could understand what we were trying to achieve and where we were in our life stage, I think.
I think it's really hard for a professional in any space, but finance, in this instance, to just assume that people don't know. And I think that's what we do poorly in finance, is we just assume that people know, because there's all these acronyms and this stuff and you've got this knowledge, but you need to sort of dumb things down, because you guys are really smart and you're great at what you do. But I think people feel really silly when it comes to money. So it's almost like you get to this point and you don't want to ask because you feel like you should know. And then people say all this stuff, and it's like I spoke to this marketing consultant this one time, and they say all these words, and I'm like, all those words sound good. And then you speak to somebody that knows, and they're like, well, actually, no, that's all just bullshit. They're not things that you need. So I think you want to make sure that you keep it super simple, because that's what sort of ties into that confidence, definitely. But it's challenging. It's very challenging for us as finance professionals to do that, but it is something that I think is really crucial to getting those results. Tell us, Kev, what if you were to go it alone? What do you think? What would be different now?
Well, we'd probably still be following the bad that we kind of recognised it wasn't really a good way to go with just loading the offset up. I think we would just be pumping that as much as we could and carried on living on credit card with very little to show for it at the end of the month. I don't think we would have necessarily, although we realised that there was we were potentially leaving cash on the table, even from the point of we could be earning more than 2% or 2.4% or whatever our mortgage is, I can't remember, but whatever we were earning there, whatever we're saving there, if we look at putting that in a different place with a higher return, there's just so many questions, mate, to be honest. Now we probably would have just carried on, because like you say, to your point on time, it's both of us are flat out doing what we're doing. Work in Sydney most of the time, and it's when you come back, you're knackered. You don't want to be whipping out the laptop to figure out what numbers need to go where, and changing financial strategy. It's a decent bit of work. So just I think, to be honest with you, we probably would have just carrying on and be seeing very little benefit off the back of what we were doing, even though we think we're doing the right thing and we're saving as hard as we can. Realistically, we're probably not doing it in an aligned way and not getting any results out of the back of it, and we probably wouldn't have realised for another year or 2 years, or had enough time to put it on the priority list to say, hang on a second, we really need to do something about this now. So I'm really glad, mate, to be honest, that we approached when we did, and for us it was really a right time for us, and allowing us now to be confident moving forward. We've just got the house and we can start focusing on the other things, and we've got that goal in mind of what we want to achieve. So it's been a really positive experience for us.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it is really easy for life to get in the way, and I think especially for time poor people, that it's like one, you're working hard, and then you've got, your life, your family, partner, all of that stuff to to deal with. And then, you do need some downtime as well. So the last thing you want to be doing is trying to, spin your wheels, trying to figure a bunch of stuff out where you don't really know and you're not confident. And then it's so easy that something happens and the website doesn't load properly and you're just like, oh, stuff it, that's it, I'm out. And, and then time goes on and all the time you're missing that opportunity to be building that momentum. No. Kev, what do you think, having gone through the process now, what would you say, what sort of situations for people do you think are suited for having a financial advisor? Like, when should someone be looking to use a process like this?
Man, I wish I had done it a lot earlier. Just to be even aligned in terms of what I wanted to achieve before I had a family, and take it back right the way from coming out of university. I don't think there's a too young stage, because at those points in your life you're just quite frivolously not really thinking about it, and it doesn't matter that you could be saving a small chunk, and it can be negligible, but to get your mindset in the right place, I think that's a big thing to be doing early. And we talk to our kids around how to save their money, and trying to split their pocket money into different areas and stuff like that, just to give them a basic understanding, so they're not trying to change their mindset when they grow up. It's a mindset
building it the whole way
in. So mate, to be honest, I don't think there's a too early time. I think it's a case of every day that you're not doing it is a day probably too late. And we wish we'd done it a lot earlier, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's so hard though. I think one of the realizations that because I've been doing a few of these conversations with our clients over the last little bit, is that people, because there's so many different ways that people do financial advice, they don't really know, what to ask for, or what they, what sort of advice they should be doing. And it's easy that you go to an advisor, and if they're not built to look after you in the way that you need to be looked after at that point in your life, that they just say, "I'll just come back later." But they don't say that there's probably a better advisor out there that would be able to deliver some of those things that you want. They just don't, because they're just not built for it or whatever. So I think it's like you want to know the sort of advice that you want for where you're at before you go seeking it, so that you know that you can choose the right person. And I suppose on that, Kev, what if there was someone out there that was looking for some help with their money? What would be your top tips for them?
I think it would be to reach out and get some advice, right? I think I can give you 3 things, but it's not going to be the 3 things that are probably right for me, but they're not necessarily right for that person. And the same as them reading on the internet, it's more my circumstances than theirs. So I think the best thing they can do is get in touch with someone that they can trust, and look for their circumstances, what's right for them, mate, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, there's obvious things that around the frameworks of spending, and I think that would probably carry across everybody. I think everyone would really benefit from that. Reviewing everything that you've got at play at the moment, and then probably deciding those longer term conversations around where do you want to be in 20 years time, and how are you going to get there. But you probably don't want to, again, drink from the fire hose and try and do your own research, right? So I think the really easy one would be around the framework of setting up your banking framework, which is pretty strong to just give you that benefit straight away.
And how do you think people should go about finding the right advisor to actually help them with what they want?
Yeah, I mean it's tricky. I mean, for us, I talked to a few people, like just friends, as I mentioned before, friends are using different financial advisors, and understanding what they were doing. And I think referrals are always a good thing. I mean, for me personally, I've been following you for a fair while on LinkedIn, and I bought into the things that you were saying, and I felt that because I knew what you were thinking before I was talking to you in a way, which might be a bit weird to say, but I understood your principles of what you were trying to deliver, and they aligned with what I was looking for. You know, that kind of research, you know, from the podcasts and the other things you do around the newsletters, etc. It made it very easy for me to then buy into that situation, because I knew that, you know, you were delivering what I wanted already in these other channels. So you know, that worked for me by just doing that piece of research. And then I would say, you know, referrals always go well in terms of, you know, I think there's that kind of influence mechanism of, you know, it's trusted. If you trust someone and they're giving their opinion, you know, you automatically pass that trust on. So they're the two big ones, I would say. I mean, we didn't go scouring Google for financial advisors or anything like that, to be honest. I don't think I would recommend that, because, you know, you can get anyone just buying their way to the top of those things, and it wouldn't necessarily reflect their ability to service.
Yeah, I think that extra bit of accountability with if it's come through from somebody that you know that they're not going to want to sell you up the river, sort of thing either. But I think your point on having the right match of the philosophies, because there's a lot of different ways to be right, and I think you guys went through that process. You do that introductory sort of what we call the breakthrough session, and it's about saying, well, here's what we think is important. Does that align with what you think is important? You know, and you want to make sure that you've got that before you start going down the path, so that you don't get through and then go, what do you mean you think it's important to have, you know, a banking framework, or invest in you know, trying to get 20% a year in investment returns, or these sorts of things that you need to know at the front end, so that you can make sure that it's going to be, you know, good advice, one, but also advice that you're going to be prepared to follow through on. Kev, last question for you, mate. You know, obviously you guys you paid a fee to go through the process, and you're paying us an ongoing fee for that ongoing support. For you guys, in your mind, what makes those fees worth paying?
Well, I just think it's just probably an amalgamation of everything that we've spoken about today. I mean, the first off fee gave us that comfort and that plan of, this is where we want to get to. So, you know, that's the first chunk, and then that ongoing piece is exactly what we were saying around tax and you know, some of the extra advice pieces that we're getting. And for me, in my personal circumstances, if I want to make an investment into a car or whatever, I've got someone to speak to. So that's the ongoing piece. So they're the two main pillars, I would say. Is the first one is really getting your head out of the clouds and getting a plan in place, and you know, and really having that tangible structure set up that you can move forward on. And then the other one is that ongoing support, which then gives you, you know, if we were struggling around, oh, well, we want to move this from here to there, and how is that going to affect our long-term returns, and, you know, even, you know, buying a car, or kids going to this school rather than this school, all those things, you know, they're not one-off decisions that you make at that point in time. You know, life just doesn't work like that, right? So, you know, being able to up and down and scale and make decisions on the fly with confidence is that ongoing piece for us.
Yeah, I think the last year and a half has taught us in particular how dynamic everything is, in terms of you know, how quickly things that's going on in the world can change, but also for us, like how much in terms of what we're thinking about and what's important to us, how much that changes as well. And I think, you know, apart from obviously the hygiene stuff, like, you know, being on top of the tax, supporting those decisions, all of those things, that there's unfortunately no like set and forget money strategy these days. So you need to be prepared. That it's great to have a great plan, but we know that the reality isn't going to follow our nice little spreadsheet. We need to be ready to adapt and evolve with that. But Kev, thank you, mate. We've covered a lot of ground there. I think from, you know, getting online, investing, you know, the scenario planning and tips for advice. So, buddy, thank you. Appreciate you taking the time, and yeah, great story. Really, really pumped for what's coming up over the next little bit.
Great, thanks, mate. No, thanks for having me.
Cheers, Kev. See you, bud.